I actually was going to ask you a question, David, because I know I mentioned a minute ago. I know you've done some house hacking stuff, but I don't even know all what you've done. Can you explain like your journey real quick through house hacking, and then we'll go on to more questions.
The first part is I'm in this really unique position as a real estate agent where not only do I do this for myself, but I actually help other people do it. So I get massive exposure to different strategies and how they work. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Craig and his book, because I've seen there are people that literally did not make sense for them to buy a home until you consider house hacking, and it becomes way better for them. They're spending way less than the rent, and they're owning a home, and they're getting future appreciation. So in the Bay Area, what we have to do is figure out, because there's not a lot of houses that are just a duplex or a triplex. We don't have many of those. So you kind of have to be creative about how to do it, like what Craig's saying, renting out rooms, buying houses with a split level so that you live in the downstairs finished basement and you rent out the upstairs. Sometimes that means you got to run a bathroom downstairs. You got to take the plumbing from above and run it down, and there's going to be a little bit of rehab work that would be done. So the first thing I would say is, like, don't think you can't do this because there's not just a duplex and you needed it to be a duplex. If you can find one, that's amazing, but you can make it work without that, and sometimes that's even more profitable. The way I do it is super simple. So I live about 12 minutes away from my real estate office in Discovery Bay, California. And what I do is I have interns that want to come work for me, move into my house and rent a room from me, and then work in the office where they learn how to, build wealth through real estate. And I just rent out my rooms. I'm a single guy. I don't use hardly any of my house anyways. I really only need a bedroom. The kitchen is fine to share with everybody. It ends up paying my mortgage for me. I get to live, 12 minutes away from work. I still have all the space that I would need, and I'm not home a lot, so it's not that big of a deal to have roommates. And I just think, Brendan, you said that earlier, and it's such a good point, is people think in their mind, I just couldn't have roommates. I just couldn't do it. And that's not true. Craig set up, a little divider in his living room and put a futon in there, and boom, he's like saving massive money, and it's not complicated. Yeah. If you can't have people in the house with you, you just cannot do it, then you just look for a house that has like an area that you can divide. Can I rent out the downstairs and live in the upstairs? Can I rent out this side of the house and live in that? Can I find a house with an ADU? Can I make a house with an ADU? The idea of house hacking is a principle. It's not I need to find this thing and run with it. It's the idea that your home can generate income for you and reduce your biggest expense.
Yeah, it's called, have you heard of hedonic adaptation?
No, but I like the sound of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of like, basically you get something new or you do something for the first couple of weeks and it feels super uncomfortable or super different, but 2 or 3 weeks later, it's kind of normal, right? It's like if you were to buy a Ferrari, the first 2 weeks you're going to feel like a cool cat in that Ferrari, and then week 3, it's going to be your car. So it's the same thing with the house hack, right? The first 2 weeks behind that curtain was a drag for sure. I was not comfortable. It was hard. I wasn't sleeping very well. But then towards the end, my room was vacant, but I would still choose to sleep on the futon because that was my bed. Right now, I felt more comfortable there. So it's just the same.
You
same
adjust
thing.
pretty quickly. Now, a couple questions for you. First of all, is this only a single person's game? Is this only something that the young 25-year-old? How old are you?
I'm 26.
26-year-old guy can do, or David Greene, handsome young real estate agents can do, or is this something that ugly guys like I could do?
Anyone can do it. I mean,
I did
Brandon, you did it. So yeah. No, I mean, anyone can do it, right? It just depends on what strategy works for you and your family. Again, it's going to be harder to live behind a curtain with a family, but I actually know someone who did live behind a curtain in their living room with a family, and they gave me the inspiration to do what I'm doing. So yeah, it was in San Francisco actually when I was living out there. So yeah, I'm telling you, if you're okay with being a little bit uncomfortable for a couple weeks before that hedonic adaptation sets in and you become comfortable doing whatever that is.
Yeah, that hedonic adaptation thing works both ways too. Like you get used to certain things. Like when I was first, when Heather and I first got married, like we would literally sleep in our car. We did Prius hacking. We traveled around the country in our Prius and slept in the back because the hotels are expensive. And we camped more often, and that was a trip. Now then we got into we start staying at Super 8 motels. Super 8 or Motel 6. Like the cheaper $70 a night hotels. And now today, we rarely stay at anything that's less than a Hilton or a Marriott. And I mean, will I get into Four Seasons level? I only stay at the Four Seasons? I don't know, but it works both ways, and it's dangerous, right? It's dangerous because you get sucked into this idea of now I got to pay. I had a friend once, we went out to dinner, and I've said this on the podcast before, but I'll say it again. I went to dinner with this friend, and he was talking about how he's living just he's broke. He's living paycheck to paycheck, and he's always just scrounging for money. And then he said he made $300,000 or $250,000 a year, or that, the past year. And I'm like, what do you spend your money on? He's like, I don't know. I'm just living. And then the waiter comes over and he's like, what would you like? And he's like, I'll get that bottle of wine. And it was like $400 bottle of wine. And he just orders it without even thinking about it. And and I was like, I get it. That's that hedonic adaptation, right? Like that was normal to him and that was acceptable and that was comfortable. And he's not going to buy a $100 bottle of wine or a $50 bottle of wine. Like that'd be ridiculous, right? So it works in all cases. And it sounds like I'm making fun of my friend, but I do the same thing. We all do the same thing, right? We're wearing nice clothes. But there was a time in our life when we were probably in college where we didn't wear nice clothes. We shopped at thrift shops or whatever, right? So it's a natural part of life.
Yeah.
So how does somebody,
Exactly.
okay, so let's shift slightly from house hacking and go a little bit broader. Financial independence. What is financial independence and how does that hedonic adaptation hurt that? And how can somebody overcome that? We're going big picture here.
Yeah. So, big picture financial independence is basically, the technical definition is that when the income from your investments, the passive income from your investments exceeds your expenses such that you no longer have to work, right? And then that basically frees up 40 plus hours of your week because that is dedicated to work. And now you can just go pursue your passion, travel, spend time with your family, or you can continue to work, but now you have all of the leverage and negotiation in your hands rather than your employer's hands. So that's the short and swift definition of financial independence. And that's again what we do here at BiggerPockets, right? Is just teach people how to achieve financial independence through real estate investing so they can then go and change the world and do whatever they're super passionate about. And that's why I'm super passionate about this as well and why I love house hacking.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so I want a house hack, Craig, and I'm looking around and I don't see any for easy ones. There's no duplexes or triplexes, priced below market value, where I can add value, and I have low risk. So what would you tell me that I should do?
I would say you have to get creative, right? Now, I've heard this multiple times now in this market, there's no such thing as finding deals. You have to make deals, right?
Oh, that sounds so smart. Who says that?
Yeah, it's probably David Greene or Brandon Turner, but who knows? Yeah.
Not me.
But yeah, so that's kind of like the same thing that that I've been doing in the Denver market, right? The first one I lived behind a curtain, that was making the deal, right? Now that duplex is on its own and it works with me moved out because there's two separate units. I was trying to find another duplex for a while or triplex or quad, but then I realized that it just wasn't working, right? There were very few that actually worked, and the ones that maybe came on the market were gone in the second by cash buyers that I could not compete with. So then I went, okay, what else could I do? And then I looked into the single family home option and renting out the rooms, and that worked great. So that would be like, in my opinion, it's the best option because you profit so much and you still have your own living space in terms of like you have your own bedroom, you're still sleeping behind a door and windows and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I was kind of like, if I'm cruising on Zillow and I'm looking for properties and I live in Austin, Texas, what type of stuff would you guide people to be looking for a house would be a good house hack?
Yeah. So the first thing I do is I ask them what their comfortability levels are. Right. So I'm also an agent too here in Denver, and I help people house hack as well. So first thing I always ask is, what's your comfortability level? Are you willing to take the cheapest room in the house and rent out all the nicest rooms? Or do you want the most expensive room in the house? Or do you need your own place? In which case we'll have to look for a duplex, triplex, or quad. And then I tell them, if you're going to go that multifamily route, it's again back to that spectrum. You're going to sacrifice profitability for that comfortability. You're going to pay for that comfort. So usually they end up going with, yeah, it's my first one. I really want to get the most out of this first investment. We'll go with the single family. And usually it's not too hard to convince them that way. But again, if they are really gung-ho about having their own spot, I'll look for a place with a separate in-law unit or the duplex, triplex, or quad, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool. One thing that we kind of touched on it a couple times here, but I wanted to just point it out here about, we talk about the financial side of financial independence. I can pay my bills. I don't have to work. If something happened, I lost my job, I'd be okay. What I think is actually probably the best thing about house hacking is when you eliminate, and financial independence in general, when you eliminate that expense, you are able to then take risks on other big things in your life that help you generate massive revenue later on. Like by house hacking, it gives you the ability to quit that crappy job and go take a shot at a startup, or you quit your job and go into flipping houses full time, or being a real estate agent. I mean, like the reason I told that story right earlier about a friend of mine who lives on the East Coast and that, $3,000 a month rent, the reason he wants to be an agent, he keeps talking about wanting to be a real estate agent. But I mean, David, you know the stats, like, I don't know, however long it takes like agents to make their first sale and how many like new agents make like nothing the first year. he can't do it. He can't do it. He can't take that risk. But if he had no payment at all to live, even for like a year, again, like that return on potential, we'll call it the ROP, like the return on potential is huge. Like it's millions of dollars for a little bit of uncomfortability for a few weeks until you get used to it, right?
Yep, exactly. I think Scott says it. I love the way Scott says it, is he says, most people are out there playing not to lose, but once you're financially independent, you're playing to win. So it's totally different, right?
It's an amazing idea, because as you're house hacking, you're probably less comfortable. So there's a part of you that's wanting, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. And how powerful is that as a motivator to get you in there and play to win? Now, wouldn't you guys agree that's one of the main reasons people don't succeed is like they're just comfortable and they're on cruise control and they're having a hard time finding that inner beast that just wants it so bad? Well, when you're sleeping on a futon every day and you can't have your girlfriend come over or whatever, it definitely puts a fire in you to want to get ahead. And that's such a good point. Like you can access the return on your potential.